Hello, everyone. Today we're here with Kirk Adams, and he will be talking in our focus session about unlocking untapped talent, the Apex program, and the future of inclusive cybersecurity. I let you have the stage, Kirk. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Francesca, for giving me the opportunity to be here today. I really appreciate it. I am Dr. Kirk Adams. I am the immediate past president and CEO of the American Foundation for the Blind, which was Helen Keller's organization for 45 years. Prior to that, I had that same leadership role at the Lighthouse for the Blind, Inc. here in Seattle, where I live. I'm a doctor because I have a PhD in leadership and change. And I'm here today to talk about the Apex program. There is a webpage, www.theapexprogram.com. And leading up to that, I'm going to talk about employment of blind people in general, my own employment journey as a blind person. I'll talk a bit about the distinction between an impairment and a disability, and how do blind people work in the digital environment. And then we'll dive into the specifics of the Apex program and why and how you can get involved. So blindness is a significant disability, and people with significant disabilities, including us who are blind, only 35% of us are in the workforce. And that's about half the general population. So working age adults in the general population, 7 out of 10 are working. In our community, only 35% are working. And that leads to a lot of bad things, because a lot of us live in poverty. And there are health disparities and psychosocial impacts of poverty. So I've dedicated my professional and academic careers to creating opportunities for blind people and people with other disabilities to thrive through meaningful employment. So my own employment journey, I was born sighted, and my retinas both detached when I was 5 years old in kindergarten, and I became totally blind very suddenly. My parents I was born when they were in college, so they were in their mid-20s and had never met a blind person before I woke up in the hospital as one. And at that point in time, kids with significant disabilities were not typically educated in the local public school. And that's what the school told my parents. Kirk can't come back to school here. He needs to go to the state school for blind children. And we lived just north of Seattle then. They visited the Washington State School and didn't like it. They visited the Oregon State School and loved it, and quit their jobs and moved myself and my brother down to Oregon so I could go to the Oregon State School for the Blind, which I did for first, second, and third grade. And now I know I was given 3 really important gifts at that school. And I know this from a research-based standpoint because I did my dissertation for my PhD. It's called Journeys Through Rough Country, an ethnographic study of blind adults employed in large American corporations. So I interviewed a lot of really cool blind people working at big brand name companies that we all know. And I asked them what led to their success. Why are you able to be successfully employed when so many of us aren't? And there were nine themes that emerged, and three of those themes that led to people's success I was given at the School for the Blind. So those gifts, the first was blindness skills. There was no question I needed to learn Braille because I was totally blind. No question I needed to learn how to travel independently and safely and gracefully with a long white cane. And it'd be keyboarding now, but I was taught how to type as a 6-year-old. So when I had my skills up to the appropriate level, I could go start in on public school, which I did in 4th grade. So I had the blindness skills. The second gift was high expectations. My parents were teachers. My dad was a high school basketball coach. They expected me to do household chores and get good grades, and later on in life to participate in athletics and school activities. And at the school for the blind, there were 120 of us blind kids, K through 8. And if blindness was your only disabling condition, you were expected to be at grade level in all subjects. So I was given that. And lots of kids with disabilities aren't, because people have misperceptions about their capabilities and what they can do, what they can become. And sometimes those low expectations become internalized. The third gift I was given was a strong internal locus of control. And that means belief deep in my bones that I can overcome obstacles, I can creatively solve problems, I can set my own course the way I want to. And that's opposed to a strong external locus of control, where you really feel stuff happens to me and there's not much I can do about it. And they gave us that strong internal locus of control really intentionally. Now I know this as a 6, 7, 8-year-old, I didn't, but they had us, backpacking in the Three Sisters Wilderness area and up on Mount Hood, building giant forts out of giant snowballs, and in the tide pools on the Oregon coast, exploring and finding sea anemones and starfish. And they had us climbing trees and skinning our knees and doing things kids do. So fast forward a bit, I got a full academic scholarship to a small liberal arts college in Walla Walla called Whitman College. And I was an econ major, and I was Phi Beta Kappa and cum laude, and the senior class speaker, and all good academic accomplishments. And I was accepted to a couple of graduate schools, but I really wanted to marry my college sweetheart, which I did. And we've been married 39 years. And I wanted to have kids, and I wanted to buy a house and do those things. So I started looking for a job. And I was looking for jobs in finance, financial analysis, things like that in Seattle. And I would send out my cover letter and my resume, and I would have a phone interview. It would go great. And then I would walk in with my long white cane and my slate and stylus so I could take some notes in Braille. And not surprisingly, the employer sitting across the desk had not had any experience working with blind people, not aware of our capabilities and the tools and techniques and technology we use to perform work tasks. And so I was not getting hired. And then I decided to change my strategy. I said, I changed my cover letter. If you have a significant disability, you have to decide in the hiring process when to disclose your disability. And at first I thought, I'm not going to let them know I'm blind until the last minute. But I changed that strategy, and I said in my cover letter, I've been blind since age 5. Here's how I've done what I've done. Here's how I'll do the job. And then I was not even getting the phone interview. So I have had that experience that so many of us have, of sending out literally hundreds of resumes and dozens of interviews and not being hired. And I've devoted my life to changing that picture. So I do want to talk a little bit about the distinction between an impairment and a disability, because it's important to the big picture of employment. So I have an impairment. I'm blind. I'm visually impaired. But that doesn't mean I'm always in a disabling situation. If I'm running a board meeting, which I've run many, I led 2 pretty large nonprofits, and I have my agenda in Braille because I'm a Braille reader, and I've got my committee reports and my financials, I can run that board meeting as effectively as anyone. If I walk in and sit at the head of the conference table and you hand me a stack of print, I am in a disabling situation because my impairment does not allow me to interact effectively with the built environment of print. Oftentimes when I'm talking to a group, I will say, if there's anyone 5'2" or shorter in the room, would you please clap? And always someone does. And I say, that's a characteristic of yours. A characteristic of mine is I'm blind. characteristic of yours is you're not a tall person. And if you walk into a room and there's a package you need and it's on a shelf that's 8 feet off the floor, the characteristic of your height does not allow you to interact effectively with the built environment of the height of that shelf. So you're going to need to get a tool, like a step stool, or you're going to need to form a team with a taller person who can reach that package down for you. And then you might want to change the built environment. You might want to build a lower shelf so you're not in that disabling situation again. So what we want to do for people with impairments is reduce the number and severity of the disabling situations as much as possible. And there's really 3 environments. There's the social, the built, and the digital. And because we're talking about cybersecurity, we're going to focus on the digital environment, which leads me to the expanded core curriculum. So there's a framework called the expanded core curriculum for blind students when we're in school. And at some point, probably around 5th grade, 6th grade, you get the news that you have to learn everything the sighted kids learn and 9 more things. So you're going to have to work longer and harder than your classmates. You're going to need you're going to need to learn how to access printed materials. For me, that's Braille. You're going to need to learn orientation and mobility skills, which is traveling independently safely as a person who's blind. You're going to have to learn self-advocacy because you, as a blind person, are going to have to advocate for yourself in ways your classmates will never have to do. And you have to focus on career exploration and school to work transition because it's going to be harder for you to get a job than it is for your classmates. And you have to learn assistive technology. So assistive technology or access technology is what we use to access the digital environment, computers. And the generic term is screen reading software. And you all have it if you have a smartphone. In Apple products, it's called VoiceOver. You can go to settings, accessibility, and turn VoiceOver on and play around with that and experience what a screen reader does. In Android, it's called TalkBack. For my PC, I use a screen reading software called Job Access with Speech, or JAWS. And what these screen readers do, they verbalize through a speech synthesizer what you're seeing on the screen. And in my case, since I'm a Braille reader, it also drives a refreshable Braille display so I can read in Braille, one line at a time, what you're seeing on the screen. And it also allows us to navigate. We can't use a mouse. So there's 300 plus keystrokes we learn. So we can navigate on a website, use search engines, spreadsheets, etc. And now we're finally going to talk about what I came to talk about, which is the APEX program. So the APEX program was founded by a cybersecurity company called NovaCoast. They're the parent company. They're very entrepreneurial. I was introduced to them about 3 years ago and became part of the APEX team to connect the program with the blindness community and all of the resources that we're going to talk about. They run SOCs in the US, UK. They're standing one up in Shannon, Ireland right now. They have a federal practice with 40 or so federal clients. They have a conference business. They run 2 cybersecurity conferences a year called Innovate. They have a staffing division, and they have a training division. And several years ago, they were founded in Santa Barbara, California. They have a SOC in Wichita, Kansas, and they formally moved their headquarters to Wichita. And as their leaders began engaging with the community there, they were introduced to a nonprofit called Envision, which focuses on employment of people who are blind, a sister agency to the Seattle Lighthouse that I ran here. And I'd worked with them many times on great projects. And in talking, learning of Envision leadership learned about NovaCoast and what they do, and they talked about training. they asked, have you ever thought about training blind people to do work in cybersecurity? And they said, no, we have never thought about that. That has not crossed our minds. And then it did cross their minds, and they partnered with Envision, who obtained a grant, a philanthropic grant, and worked with NovaCoast to make their existing training curriculums accessible for people like myself who use screen reading software. And then they worked with Pearson VUE, who administers the CompTIA Network Plus and Security Plus certification tests, to make sure the tests were accessible. And then they set up the program with the State Vocational Rehabilitation Agency in Kansas. And they built it and no one came. So students were not coming. And that's about the time I was introduced to them by a blind friend who had met one of the founders. And I've been engaged with the Apex team since then. And we are set up now with vocational rehabilitation in 24 states. And I'll talk about VR in a bit. So the program was really spearheaded by a gentleman named David Main. There's a nice video at the apexprogram.com website, a 6-7 minute video about David. So he was in a terrible car accident. He lost a leg. Since then has had his second leg amputated, lost an eye, nerve damage in his hands, and he was on disability for 8 years, which means he was getting a very small monthly check from the government and raising 4 kids on his own. And one of his sons, they lived in Michigan, enrolled in community college and started taking a cybersecurity class, and he was so very excited about it and told his dad about it, and David said, I'll enroll. So he went on and earned a 2-year degree in cybersecurity, and NovaCoast hired him, and he became a SOC manager and a hiring manager, and he's really driven this program. And I will tell you that NovaCoast is all in on this. They are passionate about changing the landscape for employment for people who are blind in the cybersecurity industry. So the program is 200 hours of training. The program is really focused on one thing, and that's getting a blind person an entry-level job in cybersecurity so that they can climb that ladder once their foot is on the rung. So it's really designed to be done in 10 weeks if a person can devote 20 hours a week to study. There's a quiz after every section. Program staff, David, monitors it. If people are getting off track or seeming to struggle, there's an intervention. And then the individual would then take the Network Plus and Security Plus certification tests. And again, everything's accessible with screen reading software.
Thank you so much for introducing that program to us. We have a question from the audience.
Sure.
And that is, he's looking into the program, and does it also support people who are neurodivergent or no?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and it's specifically designed for blind people because we needed to make it accessible, but we're certainly welcoming of person with any type of disability, hearing, vision, mobility, cognitive, neurodiverse, absolutely.
That sounds amazing. And we have another follow-up question on that. It says, how has being blind shaped your approach to problem solving or leadership in this tech space? What can we learn from that as beginners?
Yeah. Okay, so you've read my notes, because that's what I'm going to talk about next. So why should employers think about hiring the graduates? So the lived experience of disability allows you to develop really unique strengths, and the strengths that employers say they want. So that's resilience and perseverance and grit and creative problem solving and how to analyze and manage risks and communication skills and working in teams. There's a great book called The Talent Code that talks about how we as human beings develop strengths. And that's by overcoming increasingly difficult challenges. So if you're going to be a chess champion or a concert musician or an Olympic athlete, you're going to intentionally be set increasingly difficult challenges. And as we grow and go through life as a person with a significant disability, we're facing increasingly difficult challenges all the time. So we solve problems all day long. There are really good metrics that show if a company, a department, a work group employs a significant number of people with disabilities, there's lower turnover, there's less absenteeism, better safety records, better employee satisfaction, better customer perceptions. And the tipping point seems to be about 20%. If a work group has 20% of people who have disclosed disabilities, all these good things happen, and good things happen in the culture. It becomes a more empathetic, more communicative corporate culture with a lot of active mutual support. And I do want to just mention the resources. The vocational rehabilitation system is your primary resource. It's funded through the Rehabilitation Act. Every state has vocational rehabilitation agencies that have, and they pay for this program for the students. So that's no out of pocket for the students to take the training or the tests. But they can come into your company if you're an employer, and they can do an assessment of your systems. They can purchase the hardware and software that the person with a disability would need to do the job. They can pay for a salary during an on-the-job training period. They can do a ton. And then there's also work opportunity tax credits and state tax incentives. There are, in any town of any size, there's community-based nonprofits have philanthropic dollars. So there's a lot of resources to help create these successful employment opportunities. And we'd love to connect with employers. We'd also love to partner with other training and workforce development programs to help you become more inclusive of people with disabilities. It's what we know how to do.
Thank you so much for bringing this important topic into this conversation. And also another comment that we have here is they're thanking you for sharing, and they're also saying that they have a hidden disability, and they are agreeing that it's important to show employers that we are as capable as other candidates.
Right. And you can talk about strengths. That's what I tell young blind people with 18, 19 years old, if they're applying for jobs. I say, everyone's resume is going to look the same, but yours can look different because you've accomplished some really unique things living your life as a person with a significant disability. So talk about that as a strength.
Thank you. Is there anything else that you would like to add? We're coming to...
Yeah, I would just say anyone who has any interest at any level as a student, an employer, a partner, just go to www.theapexprogram.com and fill out an inquiry form. Or you could reach me at kadams, KADAMS, at novacoast.com. Or on LinkedIn, I'm Kirk Adams, PhD, and I'm very, very active there. So I will happily talk to anyone who's interested in changing the employment outcomes for individuals with disabilities.
Thank you so much for being here and agreeing.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
This important topic, and I hope that our audience got a little unique peek into other career paths with inclusiveness in cybersecurity.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So we have another session that is coming up, and the title about with that is Cybersecurity Career Launch, Essential Skills, Certification, and Entry Points. If you would all go jump into the next StreamYard, would be wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, see you there. Bye.